In Young and the Restless, Michael Mealer's character Kyle Abbott is seen getting ready to leave for Los Angeles after he finally located the place where Claire Grace Newman, Haley Aaron, is staying away from her mother. But when Kyle doesn't have his way with Claire, I believe he might spiral utterly out of control. We'll discuss what might occur if Kyle receives a severe and final rejection from Claire. Kyle rushed to Victoria Newman, Amelia Heil, for information after he made up his mind that he would travel to Los Angeles in order to win Claire back. She first objected, but Claire's mother eventually gave in and let Kyle know where Claire was staying so he could locate her in Los Angeles. Even worse, Kyle has now promised his son Harrison Locke, Redding Munsell, that he will bring Claire back to them. However, I seriously doubt that things will turn out the way Kyle says they will or hopes they will. After Claire closes the door on their future, I have a feeling that things get worse. Kyle informs his parents, Diane Jenkins, Susan Walters, and Jack Abbott, Peter Bergman, that he is going to Los Angeles this week. Despite Harrison's repeated pleas for his father to stay, the young boy eventually gave in when Kyle promised to bring Claire home to them. Kyle is making inappropriate promises to his young son. If Kyle is unable to persuade Claire to alter her mind, we will witness Harrison's heart being broken. And I believe that everyone is aware of how that will proceed. Kyle's position is that he must rescue Claire from the playboy Holden Novak, Nathan Owens, and bring her home. However, Jack and Diane caution Kyle that Claire may be exactly where she wants to be, and that she is well aware of Holden's identity and actions. This brings to mind the time when Kyle ignored Jack and Diane's attempts to dissuade him from proposing to Claire. Again, Jack and Diane are in the present, just as they were in the past. Claire is well aware of who she is with and what she is doing. She is not one of Holden's victims. Claire is actually very happy to be in Los Angeles with Holden. She appears to be as interested in him as he is in her, and she is flirting. This week, Claire and Holden's relationship is likely to get more intense. Kyle is a man on a mission when he arrives in California. He assured Harrison, his son, that he would bring Claire home and put things right. But Kyle has no control over that result. By making promises to Harrison that he is unable to keep, he is acting somewhat like a poor dad. Nothing about this situation indicates his strategy will work. Claire will probably be furious and upset when he arrives in Los Angeles this week. She has repeatedly urged Kyle to give her some space so that she may gather her thoughts and breathe. However, the last time, he made a proposal instead of listening. Claire ended their relationship at that point. Now Kyle has followed her out of state, doing the same mistake all over again. I believe Claire will have to have a nuclear savage breakup this time, since she already ended her relationship with Kyle. Claire says, "Lose my number." And it's the kind of moment from which there's no turning back. I also wager that Kyle tries to use Claire's love for Harrison as leverage by mentioning him by name. "Never talk to me again." However, given that Kyle is out of control, I believe Claire would state that she will gladly remain in Harrison's life but not in his. I have a feeling Kyle will go utterly crazy after she tells him to leave LA and leave her alone. Kyle might begin to deteriorate after he gets back to Genoa City and has to inform Jack, Diane and Harrison that Claire has finally rejected him. After he realizes he has permanently pushed Claire away on Young and the Restless, here is what he might do next. First, Kyle might begin to make mistakes at his position at Jebut. He already has a track record of this, slacking off, making tiny blunders that get worse over time. He skipped a meeting, as Diane indicated, and that will probably happen again. He had already been fired by Jack and Diane for losing his temper and disrespecting his mother at work. They might have to demonstrate some tough love again, maybe even fire him a second time. Secondly, we might witness Kyle having more fun. Indeed, he had already begun. He was reprimanded by Jack for drinking whiskey and making a public spectacle at the Jazz Lounge with Audra Charles, Zuleika Silver. It was awful, it was a spectacle. And everybody gazed. Jack had to take him away and sober him up weeks prior. Given the Abbott family's history with addiction, this may escalate fast. Third, we might witness Audra and Kyle squeezing into bed. They are both at their lowest, and even though they hate one another, this kind of hostility frequently turns into passion. It may be ugly and explosive if that occurs, particularly if Audra becomes pregnant. Even Genoa City would be shaken by that. Fourthly, Kyle might lose his mind and start chasing Victor Newman, Eric Braden. He holds Audra and Victor responsible for all of Claire's problems. Don't be surprised if Kyle teams up with Phyllis Summers, Michelle Stafford, Kane Ashby, Billy Flynn, or maybe even Billy Abbott, Jason Thompson, to take Victor down. Billy might be tempted to assist Kyle in pursuing the mustache, despite his assurance to Sally Spectra, Courtney Hope, that he was done with retaliation. Finally, Kyle's parenting could start to slip. When Claire doesn't return with Harrison's father, Harrison will be devastated. If the boy gets offended, Kyle can lose a lot of money if he lashes out. Harrison may be taken to Italy by Summer Newman, Allison Lanier, if he is unable to gather himself. Alternatively, Jack and Diane might take over, asking Kyle to move out until he gets his act together while still keeping their grandchild close. We'll see how it all goes, but it looks like Claire will reject Kyle once and for all, and from there, things will spiral crazily out of control. Although Genoa City has had many heartbreaks, few have been as devastating as Kyle Abbott's most recent demise. The formerly self-assured Abbott here, who was renowned for his dapper attire, easy charisma, and unwavering self-confidence, is now disintegrating in unexpected ways. Even Kyle's closest pals are concerned that he might not find his way back this time around because of the way his world is going after a heartbreaking rejection that broke both his pride and his heart. Additionally, this spiral is frighteningly raw for a man who is accustomed to controlling everything: business, love, and image. It all began when Summer Newman, Kyle's longtime love interest, made it apparent that she was done. Summer informed Kyle that she could no longer endure the never-ending cycle of pain after attempting, and failing, to restore the trust that had been shattered by secrets, infidelity, and jealousy. She said in a tremulous but determined voice during their last dispute, "Love isn't supposed to feel like this anymore." Kyle stood there in disbelief, saying, "We keep breaking each other, and I can't do it again." He briefly believed that she might alter her mind, and that all could be undone with only one more kiss or apology. However, something in Kyle broke when Summer left, taking with her 10 years of memories and their shared penthouse. Kyle told himself that it wasn't truly finished for the first few days. He held on to the hope that Summer was simply reflecting, that she would recall their past, their child, their bond, and come back as usual. He pretended that everything was okay and forced smiles as he went about his business at Jbot. However, his colleagues caught him in the act. His generally professional demeanor gave way to rumpled clothing and sleepy eyes, his tie hung loose, and his coffee sat untouched in meetings. "Summer simply requires room," he said to Billy one morning. Billy arched an eyebrow but refrained from arguing, saying, "She always returns." But he knew deep down that Summer meant it this time. Anger replaced the waning of denial. Kyle snapped at everyone, including his cousin Abby, who tried to lift his spirits by taking him to lunch at society, and his father Jack, who politely suggested he take some time off. Then he pushed his chair back and yelled, "I don't need anyone's sympathy. You don't think I can manage just one breakup? I've experienced worse." But no one was fooled by his rage. His young son Harrison also started to notice his father's mood swings. Harrison said in a low voice, "Daddy, why are you always angry?" Kyle's heart was broken by that innocent question in a way that no grown-up confrontation could. In an attempt to intervene, Jack invited Kyle to stay at the Abbott mansion in the hopes that a change of scenery would be beneficial. But rather than taking a break, Kyle immersed himself in his work, which included countless spreadsheets, late evenings at Jbot, and fruitless phone calls fueled by whiskey. The pain came up with him faster the more he attempted to outrun it. In typical Genoa City tradition, heartbreak soon resulted in poor choices, presenting Audra Charles, who is piercing, captivating, and completely dangerous. She jumped in when she noticed Kyle's weakness. She provided him with precisely what he needed: distraction, with her flawless smile and strategic charm. They clicked right away, but it was poisonous. They were both shattered and used one another to forget the individuals who had wronged them. They weren't in love. Nights blended into one another in a fog of sorrow and pleasure. Kyle, however, flinched when Audra suggested that their fling might become more. "This isn't real," he said easily to her. Never one to take rejection lightly, Audra retaliated with her trademark venom, saying, "Don't start pretending it is." It hurt more than Kyle acknowledged when he said, "Then perhaps it's time someone finally sees you for what you are, an abbot who's lost his shine." After a few weeks, it was impossible to conceal the cracks. When a plan didn't sit well with Kyle, he lost it during a JBot board meeting. His calmness disappeared, his voice increased, and his father had to intervene to restore order. Even seasoned executives were whispering in the hallways after such an outburst. When Kyle staggered out of society that evening, clearly intoxicated, and muttering that nobody respects the Abbott name anymore, Phyllis Summers happened to be watching, and she didn't think twice about calling him out in typical Phyllis way. "Kyle, pull yourself together," she growled. Kyle scowled at her, his eyes hazy, saying, "You're acting like a spoiled teenager, not an executive. Phyllis, you're the last person who gets to lecture me about destruction." His comments hung thick in the air as he walked off before she could reply. Jack discovered Kyle at the old Abbott cabin the following day after he failed to report for work. He was unkempt, and surrounded by empty bottles. Jack walked in and sternly said, "Enough. This is over." Kyle didn't even raise his head. "You wouldn't comprehend," he said. Jack, who was seated next to him, answered, "I understand more than you think. You believe that this is the first time I've seen everything go wrong." Kyle remained silent for a while. "I've made a lifetime of mistakes trying to fix pain with the wrong things." The wooden floor beneath them creaked softly, and that was the only sound. At last, Jack went on, "You're an Abbott. You cannot overcome heartache by drinking. You confront it, grow from it, and go on. Our family does that." Kyle's eyes filled with tears, but he turned away in embarrassment. Jack put a hand on his shoulder and said, "Without her, Dad, I don't even know who I am." "Then perhaps it's time to find out." In the meantime, Summer battled her own feelings. It wasn't easy to observe Kyle's decline from a distance, even though she stood by her choice to break things up. Motherly wisdom rarely prevented Summer from following her heart, even while Phyllis cautioned her against getting engaged. When she attempted to quietly check in with Kyle's assistant, she was informed of how much worse things had gotten. The assistant revealed, "He's not the same, Summer. He's not dozing off, he's hardly functioning." That evening, Summer sat by herself in her apartment, gazing at a picture of her, Kyle, and Harrison sitting at Chancellor Park on a sunny day. She finally shed the tears she had been suppressing for weeks. In a whisper, she said, "I never wanted this. I just wanted him to grow up." Harrison, not Jack or Summer, was the one who eventually reached Kyle.